You're listening to The Science of CX. My name is Steve Pappas. I'm known for my relentless pursuit of all things customer. Across my career, and also in my 6 startups, I've had to learn how to make decisions in business that customers really respond to. Let's spend some time together and help your business soar, grow, and accelerate, along with my co-host, Angela Simpson. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Science of CX. I'm here with my host, Angela Simpson. Angela, how are you today?
I'm having a wonderful day. How about you, Steve?
Well, that's great. Yeah, if I could get a printer to work today, but that's another story altogether. So we'll talk about that on another episode. Printer experience.
There you go.
Try to find one out there. Try to buy a new printer these days. It's just not even possible. But anyway, so Angela, today we've got a great show. We've got a very interesting show, actually, and we have a guest on. And today's guest is Colin Crowley. Hi, Colin. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you. Well, maybe I should give our listeners a little background on you, Colin, first before we jump into things. So let me talk a little bit about Colin so everybody has an understanding. So Colin spent over 10 years in senior leadership roles in e-commerce, customer service, and he's proud to be the inaugural vice president of customer experience at Freshly. Many of you probably have heard of Freshly if you've ordered some very healthy foods online and Fresh Food Direct, where he directs a 200-person department across 5 locations in the U.S. and beyond. Colin specializes in building customer service departments from the ground up, but he focuses a lot on the scalability, infrastructural agility, technological innovation, and gold standard quality and efficiency. Colin is also an award-winning playwright whose plays have been performed across 15 states as well as New York City and London. Okay, I've got to stop right there because maybe I should have read this before, but you're a playwright?
Yes, it's my second career that doesn't pay as well, you might say. But yes, I've been involved in theater in different capacities for about 15 years. I mainly have done writing, but early on I did some acting. And for a period of time, I also founded and was president of a theatrical not-for-profit in Connecticut. So I went through the whole experience of producing shows, one a straight play and one a musical. So it's been an interesting time of it.
Wow, that's wild.
Our bios sounded pretty similar till we got to that point. So how do you marry up the two? Is it that the skills cross over, or is it, feeding your creative side so that your business side can succeed?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's definitely an area where there are a lot of skills that cross over, I would say, in a lot of different capacities. I think one capacity is that people who have some degree of artistic inclination are more naturally suited to be in the customer support space, because at the end of the day, creativity has a lot to do with empathy and understanding people, and especially so in the context of theater or even the world of screenwriting as well, when you're dealing with characters, either portraying them or writing their words. I think also infrastructurally and organizationally, there's a lot of similarity, because theater is probably the most collaborative art form, where you're not a novel writer sitting down in the isolation of your own home, writing your masterpiece, nor are you someone who's like a screenwriter where you write a brilliant screenplay, but you're not necessarily involved in the process of having that become a film. Whereas in theater, very, very collaborative, where you need so many different actors, literally, but also in the larger sense, you need so many different actors to come together to make that happen, from the stage manager and the director and the set designer and the playwright, and everyone has their very specific role and their niche. that you're responsible for, but you somehow have to also break outside of those boundaries to be able to create some sort of coherent product. And you have to care about whether it resonates with an audience. So it's very, very illustrative of running a customer support organization, I would say.
Yeah, I guess it gives you a whole new spin when you're thinking about contact centers and writing scripts.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Well, that's part of the skill set definitely too, because in playwriting, of course, you have to be very conscious of how you are portraying characters to an audience. And every single character, you're trying to get into their mindset, and you're trying to show certain sides of them, and you're trying to guide the audience down a story. And you have to be very, very mindful of how the audience is going to interpret the words that you say. And you also have to be very mindful of how the words you put in characters' mouths can be realistically used by actors. So it requires in many different capacities being empathetic and understanding to the different needs and challenges either of the audience or the actors or the directors or what have you.
All right. I see it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, it almost sounds like as a playwright and as a head of CX, you're thinking in terms of the fan experience too, the audience, the people that are going to the play that are going to be watching it. And I'm sure they come from all walks of life, no different than you're selling to all different types of personas there, and everybody's going to take something away from it. So I guess, is the goal of a playwright to not only write the actors' characters in a way that the actor becomes the CX advocate, right? They're the ones that are communicating the message to the audience. And thinking about it in terms of a fan experience, I guess it's because it's live, it's kind of interactive because it's humans acting and humans listening, right? The goal, I would imagine, is as you're writing this and as the production team is doing everything, is to create a remarkable experience and something that will be memorable. Is that fair to say?
Definitely, yes. And I think the analogy of the actor is like the agent, so to speak, is very apt. And the people who are surrounding the actor, again, the director, stage manager, playwright, et cetera, are all creating the infrastructure in which the actor or the agent operates. And they serve a supporting role to give that agent the tools that he or she needs to be able to communicate effectively with an audience and get a certain message across in a way that's palatable. So yes, and in that regard too, you really appreciate how an agent is on an island but needs a larger organization of support in order to get his or her job done.
So the audience, so you're thinking about the audience in terms of their ideal experience. And you really probably don't necessarily know exactly what that is, but I don't think any of us have really thought about what goes into writing a play because of how interactive it is. But that, all of those things that are trying to promote an ideal audience experience through the words that you're writing and the characters, actors as they're acting it out.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And I would say even when you look organizationally how a play is structured to be successful, you could say it's kind of similar to having a conversation with a customer when you kind of break down the different components. One is that structure is very important in a play. So it's very important how you reveal information in characters and in the order that you do that. So the audience understands what's going on and also can take into mind different cues that you're sending them that are relevant to the overall storyline. It's very relevant that characters are able to communicate in a way that is clear. So again, the audience can appreciate what's going on in the story and also feel that they're invested in the characters, because if they're not invested in the characters, it won't make for a positive experience. The third thing is that you have to have a narrative arc. So you have to bring the customer on a journey and you have to have an end point in mind. And similarly for an audience member, you have an end point in mind that you're trying to get that person to ultimately end at. And you have to do that purposely, and you have to be directional in your mindset. I think there are a lot of interesting areas like that where the organization of a good play, which really transcends all sorts of different types of plays and genres of plays, et cetera, is also very true to the arc that customers go through when they initiate a customer service interaction.
Well, Colin, I have to tell you, you're taking me back to my college days. I was a broadcasting major, and one of my assignments, I took a play and transitioned it from the theater to radio. So thinking about taking all of your visual elements out and having to replace them with increased amount of audio elements, so that now I'm thinking about it in terms of running a contact center. It is the same thing. You don't have that ability to see your customer, so you have to rely much more heavily on what you're hearing or not hearing, so that you make sure that you're getting your message across. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's true. And just like when you go through the process of refining a play, I would say that's also very similar to the process of refining the standards and principles you use in your customer support organization, where it's all about sitting there and listening, sometimes with your mind, but also sometimes just literally listening to the reaction an audience has when you run a play through different reading processes and so forth before it ultimately becomes staged, and just understanding what the audience's reaction is in certain areas and whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, and how you want to change that by in turn changing the characters or changing the order of scenes or changing certain aspects of the structure of the story.
It's very interesting because, the one thing we always seem to figure out is all of us that are in the customer experience world, we all come to customer experience from a different path. And it's always interesting as to what colors our decision making and what colors the path we take, all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to provide the best experiences for our customers to keep coming back and say great things about us and be repeat customers. So it's really interesting. I find it fascinating that you kind of married the way that you develop a play to the way you develop the customer journey. And I think our listeners are probably, falling off their chairs because they're saying, wow, I never really thought that there were correlations between different areas like this that are what you would have thought would be vastly different are really not. And this one here is one. Sorry, I had to go down the path because it just felt like, I've thought about the fan experience a lot in terms of TV and different types of entertainment, because, have you ever had watch that TV show that all of a sudden was just canceled, and you're saying, man, I was so invested in that. Right. Think about what that fan experience is like. I mean, how let down do you really feel at the network executives that were looking at spreadsheets and saying, well, we're going to cancel this and we're going to try something new. And the fans that are all let down, that experience is not a great experience. And they only give you so many chances before they say, well, I'm going to go see what the other networks got, or I'm going to go see what's on Netflix or Amazon, et cetera. So, but hearing your path, to CX is really interesting. So I would imagine there are learnings that you've brought in. So maybe we could transition into what are the things that you learned there that you're using today at Freshly, but maybe you could start off with letting our audience know, for those that are not familiar with Freshly, just give us a sense of exactly what type of an organization it is and what it's producing that got us to talk to today.
Sure. We at Freshly are a ready-made meals company. We're in what's called that food tech space, which is more associated with companies like HelloFresh and Blue Apron as an example. But we're actually very different from those companies because we're not meal kit services. or a meal kit service. They ship ingredients to customers and recipes that you then use to make something wonderful out of those ingredients. So you're really getting the experience of cooking meals with a loved one, etc. So it's really as much of an experiential type of thing as it is, oh, I'm going to eat this nice meal. In our particular case, we ship meals that are fully prepared, fresh, not frozen. So they're literally cooked one day and shipped out the next in insulated boxes, and they arrive usually overnight at your doorstep, and you plop them in the refrigerator, and then when you're ready to eat them, you can plop them in the microwave for 3 minutes, or if you don't like microwaves, you can heat them up in the oven, and you're all set. We're really there at the nexus of health and convenience, I would say, and especially relevant in this day and age where so many people lead busy lives, and maybe you just don't want to cook sometimes because it's been a long day, but you don't want to get takeout or eat meals that are otherwise not healthy. Our meals are all natural and gluten-free, so they're free of artificial sweeteners and artificial preservatives and things of that nature. So whereas we don't cater specifically to like low carb or low calorie and have a variety of different options on our menu, the major principles are gluten-free and all natural. And that is the general umbrella under which we define our meals as healthy for most people. So we've been around for 5+ years now, and happy to be able to help people lead healthier lives at maximum convenience, basically.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the customer experience that you've gone through. What has the customer experience strategy been that you've had to develop coming into Freshly to provide that better experience? So, and what does that mean, and what does that look like to you? To you there? Is that the repeat orders? Is that the increased customer lifetime value? What does it culminate in?
Yep. It's definitely important to mention that we are a subscription service. So we are in this for the long term, so to speak, with customers where, you may not want to get Freshly meals every week because everyone wants to change. But the idea is that we really want to fit into people's lifestyles so we can help them lead a healthier life. So whatever cadence that may be, we want to be more of a presence in people's life. So retention and loyalty is very, very important to us. And we really framed our customer service strategy around that, and also making sure that the product promise that we give customers, our overall brand promise of marrying health with convenience, is also replicated in our customer service organization. I think a problem a lot of companies have is that there's always that disconnect between what the brand is marketing to customers and the type of service that's delivered, or even sometimes the type of product that's delivered. So we've been very, very conscious about making sure there's not that disconnect in service. In our example, it really comes down to the idea of convenience. You can go and get healthy meals in various places, but can you get a healthy meal or many healthy meals delivered to your door where you don't have to go out to the supermarket, especially in a day and age like this where everyone's hunkering down? So convenience is really probably the key pillar of our operations, even more than the healthy component. And we want to make convenience across the brand. So not just about the products, but about the service. We want our meals to be convenient for people, but we also want the entire experience for them to be convenient. So we wanted to make it easy for customers to be able to contact customer support when they want to contact customer support. So we have 24/7 coverage, and we want to make sure that we're available on the contact channels that are most efficient for customers. So we've deliberately adopted a multi-channel strategy, you may say, where we're active on phone and chat and email and messaging and Apple Business Chat, now looking at Google Business Messaging, so Facebook Messenger, social media, and we've made sure that we've held ourselves to high standards when it comes to responsiveness across all those channels. So we're looking at like email response times of 15 minutes or so and chat response times of 20 seconds. So again, making sure that we're there for customers when they need us. And that also includes empowering agents to maximize first contact resolution wherever possible. So not only do we want to make it easy for you to contact us, but when you do contact us, we want to maximize the chance that the agent you're speaking with, regardless of where they sit, because we are abroad, so we have a sizable agent presence outside the U.S., but those same agents, they're not lower tier agents or anything like that, but they're empowered the same way every U.S. agent is empowered, and in the vast majority of cases, they have the ability to be able to help customers by offering them discounts or maybe a refund here. So the responsibilities we give agents are very broad. And again, it all comes back to the idea that we want that contact experience to be as convenient as possible. So it's not just our meals that are convenient for customers.
Interesting. How do you train your folks? Because I would imagine there's a lot of knowledge at the core of what your agents need to do, whether it's ingredients, whether it's what's in each particular one. How does knowledge play into this, and how does training play in?
Yes, it's definitely true. There's a lot of knowledge to absorb. So we've dealt with that a few different ways. One way is we do have a very intensive training program. So our training program lasts about 5 weeks. And I should caveat that it's not 5 weeks of classroom training, but most of the classroom training is done within the first 2 weeks, after which people start to take contacts and they hit the floor, but in a limited capacity. So we essentially have our training team run the ramp up process. And that makes our trainers and their expertise readily available to agents for a prolonged period of time until they reach the point where they're fully hitting the floor, and we expect them to be at 100% capacity. A second thing is we have a very robust QA program, which really tries to take certain intangibles, like empathy as an example, and make those more actionable through an enhanced scoring system. So we've had this advanced program really almost from the beginning, being one of the first initiatives I established when I joined Freshly, and having had experience at other companies where they were very late on the quality assurance front, to the detriment of overall service. And this program really helps very intensively to monitor contacts and help to direct us where there are certain areas that we have to correct because there's a lack of information or a lack of understanding on the part of agents. I would say the third and last thing is that as complexity has grown in our business, we've created more and more specialized functional teams within our customer support organization. So we have our frontline agents, which we call essential operations, to make sure that they're elevated as much as anyone else because they're the core of contacts with customers. But we also have created a number of what we call special teams, which are essentially senior agents who have shown aptitude in certain areas, such as delivery being a big one for us with the limited shelf life of our meals and the fact that our boxes can't stay in transit too long, otherwise the meals spoil. So we have a delivery team of agents who handle escalated delivery situations up to and including negotiating with carriers to make sure they deliver boxes right to a customer's door. And we have a specialized team that handles online reviews and social media concerns, and we have a special food safety team, and we have a special wellness team, as an example, that's more educated when it comes to nutrition and ingredients and can have more advanced conversations with certain customers who may have intricate questions about sodium or carbs or carbohydrates or all those sorts of things. So we've tried to take those areas that do need a degree of specialized knowledge and ultimately segregate those into these functional teams, which helps to account for the fact that agents can't know everything, no matter how much information you send their way and how many tools and resources you give them. And at the same time is good internally for the department because it creates different career avenues for agents. So this includes our friends abroad too. So any agent knows that they have multiple career paths that they could proceed down in our organization if they show aptitude in delivery or food safety or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of a win-win all over the place.
Interesting.
So Colin, is one of these teams the individuals that help out when the customer experience goes wrong?
Well, we have a separate escalations process, but most of the escalations, because our functional teams are pretty broad and they take into consideration most main areas of concern. So if you have an issue that falls outside of that area, well, then we have a separate escalations process that like a supervisor would handle. And yes, they have even further enhanced capabilities. But we also try to train our agents so that not only are they able to handle most issues themselves in terms of like boundaries we set over proper procedures and accommodations. But we also have built into those procedures, escalation procedures, where if an agent reaches a certain point, they can offer more to a customer. So again, even in that context, we're trying to prevent the agent from having to hand over the conversation to someone else and just prolong that experience for the customer when we could otherwise make it shorter and sweeter for them. But yes, at the end of the day, we have escalation processes across the board where people who are supervisors, as an example, have the ability to do the maximum possible to assist customers.
Now, are all your folks now working from home?
Everyone now, yes, everyone's working from home, yes, because of the pandemic situation, and we had some of our teams working remotely anyway. Our New York-based team, because we have some people in New York and a much larger group out in Arizona, which has been our main, I guess you could say, contact center in the U.S. And then we have 2 teams abroad, one in South Africa, one in the Philippines. So our New York team has historically been remote, at least over the past 3 years, and they're primarily quality assurance based anyway. And our Arizona team is now entirely remote and on a permanent basis. And our friends in the Philippines and South Africa are temporarily remote. So yes, like many companies, we jumped on the remote work bandwagon due to the impact of COVID-19. And in some cases, we've decided to make that permanent. But for our main frontline agents, our essential operations, the goal is to, when things have cleared up, to have them go back into the office.
Great. And with that, we're going to take a very short break and a word from our sponsor.
Panviva has 25 years of empowering customer service, and we have deep expertise in how people actually use information, from our roots in learning and performance. We offer accurate, consistent information on demand to every channel. Most relevant knowledge at your people's exact moment of need. Integrated, streamlined internal processes. Systems that deliver memorable and remarkable customer experiences that boost customer retention and loyalty every time. Knowledge that extends across your entire digital landscape. To learn more, visit Panviva at www.panviva.com.
And we're back. I've got a couple more questions for you, but are there any key initiatives in the customer support space now that you're starting to really embrace that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one key initiative of ours, and I think this is true for a lot of companies, but really looking at using technology to create additional efficiencies in customer support processes so we can be more intelligent about how we use our agents and our people on the ground so that we're using them for situations that really do require very human-specific characteristics like empathy, and try to take basic processes and problems and translate those into a bot, or at least find some way to automate those processes so they're not so cumbersome. We've done different work in this area really over the past 2 years. We've been in the chatbot space for about 2 years and recently launched a new chatbot on our site to try and resolve basic questions pretty early on for customers. We've made a lot of use of robotic process automation internally, where we had a lot of success working with another company building a bot that automates the process of order cancellations, which for us historically, because as a weekly subscription, we're renewing weekly and charging people weekly. So we have instances where people forget we're a subscription, or they forget to change their meals for their next order, or, they're actually going away next week and they won't be there to receive their meals. So certain times of the day, we have an onrush of people who have their order confirmed and they can't be there to accept the meals or something. So we've been able to streamline that process very efficiently by creating a bot that essentially goes through the process of canceling a customer's order and refunding them, and also giving some built-in flexibility to agents in terms of whether they also, let's say, cancel someone's subscription, or whether they send a customer a default template, or feel that they have to craft an email on their own because the customer needs a little bit of extra TLC. So initiatives like that have helped to bring average handle time down for certain tickets from about 6 minutes to about 1.5 minutes. And with satisfaction staying just as high as ever, because we're even quicker able to address those customers' needs. So that's a big initiative for us really across the board. It's really artificial intelligence, it's RPA, it's chatbot technology, and it's also more than just, I would say, deflection of contacts. We've also used artificial intelligence to do things like automatic tagging of our contacts, so we have better information as to why people are contacting us, and able to run reports on that to change policies and procedures that otherwise are not as conducive to positive customer experience as they otherwise could be. We've experimented with different technologies that provide real-time feedback to agents as they're engaging with the customer as to how they're doing when it comes to empathy or the language they're using and things of that nature as well. It's really interesting to see what's out there. And there are a lot of up and coming companies that we've tried to work with to just explore the world of technology and see what sticks and try to be creative about things, which I guess is perhaps another way to loop in the artistic side too.
That's great. That's great. So the one thing that we tend to also always talk about is, the voice of the customer and surveys and data. How does the data for customer experience come into play for you guys?
Yeah, I have to say that, frankly, we've historically been a very data-centric company. And that's definitely a very, very important thing. Although in the customer service space, it also can be a little intimidating because it's just a fact that it's harder to collect data on customer experience and customer service than it is to collect data on conversions, for instance. So as a result, you always are having to kind of run after the cart to try to make sure that when you're collecting data and you're distributing it, that you're being holistic and examining all aspects of the customer's experience. Because if you're not mindful about that, then it's very easy to end up in these big meetings where everyone's just throwing around sales figures, and the actual experience of customers when they get the product or when they contact customer service is kind of left by the wayside just because it isn't as readily accessible. So yes, we've tried to counterbalance that by being pretty aggressive in understanding customer needs in a bunch of different ways. We do large scale surveying of customers, as an example, on a corporate level with like a NPS survey, which is a major umbrella survey. We've also done surveys of customers strategically at certain points of their order process. So immediately after they receive their first order, then after their fourth order and their eighth order, and done that in different cadences to see like where are customers at different times of their experience and what information do they need and what do they need from us to make the experience better. We've also gone outside the surveying process and done more direct outreach to customers within the customer support space. So we've done text message testing as an example, where we've sent out personalized text messages to customers after their first delivery. So rather than clicking through survey questions, you have an agent with a name contacting you, wanting to start a conversation about how you feel about our meals or how was your first order experience, etc., and testing that out using different channels. So also email to see what sort of differences in responsiveness we get from that. We also use customer support surveys, of course, for all our customer service interactions. So we have a tight idea of how customers actually feel when they've engaged a customer support agent. At times, we've also done personalized interviews with customers and focus groups, and things of that nature, and also product surveys. I think at the end of the day, voice of the customer really comes down to having a holistic suite of surveys or at least questioning experiences, you may say, because like I said, sometimes it isn't all about surveys. It can be about a customer service agent talking to a customer and creating an artificial conversation by reaching out when you otherwise wouldn't. So it doesn't all have to be as wooden as a survey, because you can get a lot of information just from agents talking with customers. And one last thing we've done in the voice of the customer, although granted it's an indirect voice of the customer, is we've tried to be good at involving our agents in larger company discussions. Because I think a lot of companies miss the fact, they may spend all this time and effort on focus groups, but they won't spend a modicum of time simply talking with customer service agents who deal with customers all day long and are really the only people who deal with customers in the organization all day long. And the wealth of knowledge that those agents have about how a new product or innovation may impact the customer's experience. So we've tried to use the agents as their own voice of the customer by including them in certain processes. An example is that we have a gentleman in our organization who's literally a liaison between customer support and the product world and the engineering world. And he's organized this pod where every quarter agents can volunteer to be a part of this pod. And we make sure there's at least one or two from each office. So we include our friends abroad in this as well, because they have their own perspective on things. And these agents get to attend meetings with engineers and product people about upcoming product developments in the pipeline. And they're there not only to provide commentary on those from, again, a customer service perspective or a customer-centric perspective, but they're also there to do test runs of new products and initiatives too, and help to train agents on the ground when they launch. So it's an attempt to try to get agents to be heard more in the larger organization as their own voice of the customer. It
sounds like you're doing a great job of not only getting the customer's voice heard, but also your employees. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely been another big initiative for us, even across the board, aside from using agents as the voice of the customer or the indirect voice of the customer. And I think a lot of companies appreciate it now, especially in the world where almost everyone is working remote in customer support, and the challenges that creates in terms of breaking up teams where you're not sitting next to someone and you don't have the natural camaraderie that can help to de-escalate a bad conversation with a customer. So we also made a lot of efforts trying to engage our agents in innovative ways. We actually have someone in our customer support organization who we call our community manager, who's responsible for communication and culture combined. So she's responsible for creating engagement strategies for agents when it comes to basic informational concepts. Like we have a daily memo that goes out every morning with updates that agents need to know, as well as maintaining a larger wiki site. But she's also involved in some of the fun, fluffy stuff, where she organizes. We have these things that we call quarantine videos, where they're like 1 to 2 minute videos, and the person who does the video one day nominates the next person. And the idea is that you do a little 1 to 2 minute video on your life in quarantine. So you have people who do like a day in my life, and they show little snippets of their cat, or them out walking or exercising. And, some people, and then again, this is for all our people. So in the Philippines and New York and Arizona and South Africa, and some people really have a lot of fun with it, and they add their visual effects and their music in the background and all sorts of things. So things like that, which have really helped to bridge the community gap that can easily be created when everyone is working remotely. We've also done a lot more to put metrics behind agent engagement, and value those metrics as much as we value like the typical contact center metrics like talk time or average email response, average response time too. So we do surveying of employees across our different offices, and we also track engagement with the emails we send, just like you track open rates for customers. So we track open rates for our agents to make sure people are reading our emails, and we track engagement because we use Slack as an instant messaging tool internally. So we track engagement on those channels where we have certain channels that are just for fun, engaging stuff. So we're monitoring how many people percentage-wise are posting or interacting or responding to something someone else said. And from that, trying to get a picture of how engaged are agents as well as how happy are they.
Wow. This is great. Well, Colin, I think we're right up against time here. I have been really thrilled with this conversation because especially when you talk about what you've done with your agents and how you treat them as a focus group and also empower them, we couldn't be happier to talk to you about it. And I'm sure our listeners who also feel the same way, that their agents are the cornerstone of a huge part of the success of an organization. So Colin, I want to thank you for for joining us, and thank you for being such an informative guest today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Really enjoyed talking to you, Colin.
Thank you.
Great. Well, everyone, I think that's another episode of The Science of CX. I'm your host, Steve Pappas, and along with me is the lovely Angela Simpson. Angela, thank you again for being here.
Always a pleasure.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Until the next time on The Science of CX. And by the way, if anybody wants to check out Freshly, freshly.com, and you'll be able to see everything that Colin was talking about. You've been listening to The Science of CX. My name is Steve Pappas. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, the highest compliment that you can give us is to subscribe, rate, and review The Science of CX. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.